Hi everyone, and welcome to the next video on lessons from Capablanca. Today we're going to look at two of the most difficult endgame positions in which it is possible to force mate. The first example is using a knight and a bishop. With perfect play, checkmate can be forced in at most 33 moves from any starting position where the defender cannot immediately win one of the pieces and the position is devoid of any immediate stalemate traps. It's a very rare situation to come across. According to Wikipedia, only about 1 in 5,000 games ends in such a fashion. Although saying that, Evgeny Alexeyev beat Ivan Shaparinov with just such a technique at the current tournament in Yermuk, Armenia a few days ago, which I was glad to see, both because it involved skillful chess and also because I like to see Shaparinov getting beaten in general. But anyway, on with this example. Capablanca writes, with a knight and bishop, the mate can only be given in the corners of the same color as the bishop. So, in the example before us here now, mate can only occur on the squares a1 or h8. He continues, the ending can be divided into two parts. Part 1 consists in driving the black king to the last line. We might begin, as is generally done in all cases, by advancing the king to the center of the board. So king e2. And king d7. To make it more difficult, and knowing the technique that white must use to win, black heads towards one of the light squared corners with his king. So king d3, king c6, and bishop f4, which immediately restricts the movement of the black king, controlling these squares. And king d5, now knight e2, and king c5. If instead king e6, then white can gain more ground against the black king by taking the opposition with king e4. So king c5, knight c3, and king b4. If instead king c6 and king d4, king d7, king d5, again taking the opposition, and no matter what black does, he will be eventually forced into one of the dark squared corners. So king b4, king d4, once again taking the opposition, which occurs a lot in the bishop and knight ending. So king a5, king c5, king a6, king c6, king a7. He's trying to head to this light squared corner because it's going to make it more difficult for white to get the mate. So knight d5 and king a8. And the first part is over. The black king is forced to the last line of defense, but he's in a light squared corner. The second part of the process consists of driving the black king from a8 to a1 in order to mate him. a1 is easier in this position than h8 would be, and the first move is to get him out of the corner. So knight b6 check, and king a7 is the only available move, and bishop c7, which again gives the black king only one move, and he's being forced down to a1. So bishop b8, which takes away the option of moving back to a7 and again forces him down the board. And here there's a danger of the black king escaping via b4 and trying to run over to the king side. So white prevents it with knight d5. And in the example Capablanca gives, the black king still tries to escape to h1 here and goes to a4. But let's have a quick look at what might happen if he'd gone back to a6 instead. So then knight b4 check forces king a5. And now king c5 gains the opposition and protects the knight and forces the king to a4. Now king c4, preventing the king escaping by b3. So king a3. And if black had tried to go back the other way, he can be forced back down with the bishop. If king a5, then bishop c7 check. And then king a4, and the black king will soon be forced into the dark squared corner. And mate will be given, as I'll show you in a second. So back to where we were anyway. King a4 just been played. Now king c5, and this is in order to stop the black king from escaping over to h1. There are a couple of ways to do this. Capablanca mentions one is by playing, instead of king c5, bishop e5, and after king b3, knight e3, which is controlling the key squares c2, c3 and c4 and keeps the black king in the corner. If he now tries king a2, hoping to escape by b1 and c1, now comes king c1, king b1, king c4, king c1 and king c3, and the king remains trapped. But the technique given instead with king c5 earlier is the one that Capablanca considered better for the student to learn, because it's more methodical and more in accord with the spirit of all these endings by using the king as much as possible. So back to where we were, and king c5 is the one we're going to look at. So now king b3 and knight b4, which stops the king escaping via c2, so he instead tries c3, but now bishop f4 stops him in his tracks. The knight's controlling this square, and the king's got this one, the bishop's got this one. And this kind of piece play is the essence of the ending, and careful calculation is necessary or the king will escape and you'll be hard pushed, having to start the process again and mate him within the 50 move limit. The only advice is to take care, as there's no fixed method to follow except for correct calculation. So king b3 and now bishop e5 forces the king back to the a file. And it's important to take note here that the king and knight are controlling squares of the opposite color to that of the bishop, which is another key theme in this ending, with the knight on a dark square it's controlling these light squares and the king is controlling c4 while the bishop takes care of the dark squares. So king a4 and now king c4 and king a5, again trying to escape to the dark squared corner, but it only delays matters because now comes bishop c7 check, which forces the king back down, and now knight d3, again giving the king only one move, and bishop b6. And here it's a force mate in 6 no matter what black does. The move given in the book is king a4, which makes sense because the white king is trying to get away from the mating corner. But now comes knight b2 check, and king a3 is the only move, and the knight needs protecting again. If it moves, then the black king can go to a4, so the correct move is king c3, and it forces king a2. And now there are many ways for white to force the mate. To ensure the black king has less chance of escaping, king c2, preventing the black king from moving to b1, is the best. So now king a3 and bishop c5 check, and you see again the knight is controlling the light squares and the bishop the dark squares, and the king this light square here. So king a2 is forced, and now it's mate in 4. Knight d3 forces the black king to a1 because it's his only move. Now comes bishop b4, king a2 is the only move, and knight c1 now forces king a1, and now bishop c3 is mate. And Capablanca writes, "It will be seen that the ending is rather laborious. There are two outstanding features, the close following by the king and the controlling of the squares of opposite color to the bishop by the combined action of the knight and king. The student would do well to exercise himself methodically in this ending, as it gives a very good idea of the actual power of the pieces, and it requires foresight in order to accomplish the mate within the 50 moves, which are granted by the rules." Okay, well I guess that's the end of this video. I'd hoped to look at a couple more positions, but I've run out of time, so I can cover them in the next video anyway. Okay, well I hope you enjoyed that and found it instructive. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.